Welcome to The Blue Dot, Northern Kentucky's premier political podcast, brought to you by the Kenton County Democratic Executive Committee. Well, welcome back to The Blue Dot podcast, where we have another great candidate interview in store for you today. And this one is for the County Commissioner position in District 3. Thanks so much for joining today. I'm Natalie MacDonald.
And I'm Brian Koehl. Local government is where decisions most directly affect people's daily lives, and the county commissioner is one of the most important and extensive positions. There are 3 commissioner districts in Kenton County, so if you live in Kenton, you get to vote for all 3 districts, regardless of the one you live in. And today we are joined by District 3 County Commissioner candidate Jordan Baldridge. Jordan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. And you have a really fascinating background. You are a software engineer who has extensive experience in AI, among other things. But I'm going to hand it over to you. Can you tell us about yourself a little bit and what motivated you to run for this position?
Sure. Yeah, hopefully I don't go too lengthy. But I am a senior software engineer, and I do work in AI, and I use the cloud. I'm also a new father to a 6-month-old as of March 24th. And, I grew up around here. I didn't grow up in Kenton County. I grew up in neighboring Campbell County, lived in Cold Spring and Alexandria. I actually lived behind St. Joe's Cold Spring, which is where I went to school as a kid, and then eventually moved out to Alexandria, and I went to Bishop Brossart. Throughout that time, was raised by working-class parents who worked at Thriftway. My mom now works at the PVA in Campbell County, and my dad, he's been a businessman, business owner. He's had a ton of jobs, and he's a handyman. He can do anything and fix anything. Growing up, I was really interested in politics and really history, but it kind of grew into politics. My dad was a city councilman in Cold Spring, and he is a councilman now in Alexandria. But then additionally to that, my grandparents really had a lot of effects on me. My grandpa on my mom's side, Papa Gieskin, he was an IRS auditor, so he worked for the government, but he was also a World War II veteran, and he taught me a lot about sacrifice and war and the horrors of war and standing up for people and fighting for what's right, even when it's scary and terrible and terrifying. My grandpa on the other side, Papa Baldridge, he also was in World War II, but he was in Panama, so he didn't quite have the fighting experience, but he grew up in Moorhead, Kentucky. He grew up with nothing. He and my great uncle, his brother, they would tell us stories about them walking up and down the mountains of Moorhead and having to hunt and fish for food because it was during the Great Depression, and it was Moorhead, Kentucky, long before any of the development that they have now. And, he was a huge success story. He taught himself a lot about math. He became a railroad engineer, and I would spend Saturdays cutting grass over there. But cutting the grass meant I'd go over there, have some coffee, and talk to him and my grandma. Then we cut the grass, take a break, eat some lunch, talk some more, finish cutting the grass. It's dinner time. We're going to talk some more. So I'd be there all day. And, I was raised in a very Catholic and Baptist household. My mom's Catholic, my dad's Baptist, very Republican. And so I was pretty conservative as a kid, but I was also very curious, and I always questioned things a lot. So as I got into high school, and especially college, but really in high school, I really started questioning things, especially during the Bush years and the war on terror and all of that. And, sometimes we would argue. We had a rule in our family, don't argue about politics. So naturally, we argued about politics. But, one thing that I always appreciated was that they always wanted to listen. Even though my grandma and grandpa, they didn't always understand my point of view or understand my questioning things, they always wanted to listen, and they were always there to listen and support me. And they really emphasized that, as long as you were working hard, as long as you were trying, that was the important thing. It didn't matter how much money you made. It didn't matter what your role or, where you got necessarily, but the fact that you were at least trying is what mattered to them. And, my grandma, all my grandparents kind of grew up in hard times. They all grew up during the Great Depression, and none of them really came from anywhere fantastical. But Mama and Papa especially, Mama grew up on a chicken farm outside of Chicago in Illinois, with lots of fun stories about that. They were 2 people that, they weren't really fully educated. My grandma was a nurse, but, that back then it was a little bit different becoming a nurse, especially during the war. But they sent every single one of their kids to college. And then every one of their kids send all of their kids to college. So it's just this amazing story. Like the Baldridge family kind of has like the real American dream story of coming from nothing and being able to create a better future for the next generation and the next generation. Last year, I found out that we were pregnant, that we were going to have a kid, and I was super excited. And then shortly after that, a friend of mine, a friend and mentor, and my team lead at work, he suddenly passed away from cancer. And he left a 10-year-old and his wonderful wife. And that scared the heck out of me all last year. All last year, I spent so much of last year just being worried about the pregnancy, being worried about the world that was kind of coming up around us. You know, everything we've seen, from the tariffs to the chaos and everything. And I really was really worried. And then as it got closer to when he was being born, I was like, you know what? I want to do something. I want to get involved. You know, I want to try anything, you know. So I went to one of the Kenton Dems happy hours, and that's where I met our chair, Danielle. I met Sarah Freilich, one of the other county commissioner candidates. That's where I met Melissa Strange. It's also where I met John Bussey, my opponent in the Democratic primary. And everybody was just so welcoming and so kind. And of course, I told them, oh, you know, I'm about to have my son's about to be born here soon. And they all joked, oh, we're not going to see you again. Which was true for a little bit. But once he was born, my son Hayden, once Hayden was born, all that fear went away. And it was just replaced with just this immense love and this desire to protect this boy, this little boy who's just coming into the world. And, you know, just to protect the life that I got to grow up in. You know, I grew up playing in the woods and riding my bike around the streets and just hanging out with friends and doing things, you know, and we had the internet, of course, not quite like it is today. But, you know, we were really free. It was really nice. Like, we lived a very Kentucky lifestyle, you know, you didn't really worry about anything. And just with some of the things that we have coming on, you know, into the world, like you have weird digital surveillance and cameras everywhere. People want to put manufacturing everywhere and kind of harm and destroy the environment. And I decided I want to fight for a better future for my son, to make sure that he gets the same opportunities that I had, to grow up having some freedom, to grow up in a world where we have trust in each other. Yeah, that's one thing. Like, I live here in Lakeside Park, you know, in Kenton County. It's pretty conservative. There's lots of Republicans. Most of my family is Republicans. And if you watch the news, you would think that we're all at each other's throats and we all hate each other. But we don't. We're all neighbors. We're all family. And that's the other thing is, you know, I want to fight for my son, but I also want to show the world that we can all work together, that nobody should be scared of each other. And that honestly, like, when I first signed up to run, it was a little scary. I was like, oh no. But honestly, you know, this experience so far, I'm less scared than ever. I've met the candidates on both sides and, you know, everybody's been very nice, very respectful. And so, you know, so far it's been a very positive experience for me. Sorry if that went on too long, but really at the end of the day, it's all about my son.
No, I think that makes sense. I mean, there's nothing like, you know, an event like that to make you start thinking about, you know, how you want to have a good future for your child, you know, and family planning. All of a sudden, you know, what are we going to do as a family? Where do I want my family to go in the future becomes a priority. My question is, around that is, you know, we hear a lot of our candidates talk about they don't feel like their children or their generation, for the younger generation, such as yourself, much younger than myself, are going to be able to enjoy the types of things that their parents had. You know, like, as you said, your parents were able to set you up so your future was better than theirs. You know, every year or every generation, we seem like we've progressed, or that's been our goal. And all of a sudden, I think many people believe that all of a sudden that's not a given. And we really need to fight to take that back. And it sounds like that's kind of where you're coming from as well, in terms of, is my son going to have as good a life and hopefully a better life and better opportunity than I had? And perhaps right now you feel like that may not be the case, and you want to be a part of making a change, making that happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that really is where a lot of it comes from too. I mean, when I came of age, you know, whatnot, when I went to college was right at the height of 2008. You had the 2008 election. So
Yeah.
that was so exciting. You had Obama versus Hillary, and then Obama versus McCain, and that was exciting. And then you had the 2008 financial crisis happen.
Right.
And that's when things kind of started feeling like they were hitting a wall. I was so excited when I went to college. I had all these dreams and ideas of what I was going to be and what I was going to do. I was going to get my degree in 3 years. I was going to become a lawyer and get my law degree. I was going to be a civil liberties attorney and fight for the Constitution. And by the time I graduated with my degree, I was burned out. I was done. When I graduated, and, it didn't help that some people around me kind of had the same attitude, but by the time I graduated, I was like, why did I even get this degree? What am I going to do with it? There's no jobs. I have a political science degree and a nonprofit administration minor. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? I can't start a nonprofit on my own. And so I just really, really struggled with that for a long time. And, that was really, really hard. And a lot of people also struggled at that time. So many people did. And, I kind of had a bit of a failure to launch. And luckily enough, I met my wife when I was working at Pizza Hut when I graduated college. A year later, we started dating. And then a year later, we actually moved to Indianapolis. And I did not want to move to Indianapolis, but I knew I wanted to be with her. And that was the best decision I ever made, because eventually we would move back here. And I got an opportunity to get into IT. And now I've created this really great IT career that I love. But it was really difficult. I mean, for the majority of the years until about 8 years ago, I was making $10 to $12 an hour. And it is not really possible to have much of a life on $10 to $12 an hour. And now, it's 2026. It's almost 20 years since I went into college. It's been, 13 years since I graduated. And it's harder than ever. One, we haven't increased the minimum wage. So people who are just getting into the economy are just already being set at that same base cap at the bottom, which is not great. But the education system has become more difficult for people. It's become even more expensive. I was pretty lucky. I had a lot of scholarships when I went to school, so I didn't really pay too much. But my wife, she's got a lot of student loans from her master's degree. I have friends that they're paying off thousands of dollars, and it's crazy. And that's just to get the education. And then if you look at the job market is just getting kind of decimated. We supposedly had a good month in March, but we'll see when they readjust those in another month like they've been doing.
Yeah.
But
the jobs number readjustment is always like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It's always, oh, hey, we got a bunch of jobs. Oh, actually, we lost some jobs.
Yeah.
So that's worrying, but that's like the situation has only gotten worse. And there's not a lot of opportunities being made for people out there. Whether it's just getting an education, there's not as much scholarships, and the scholarships aren't covering as much because the cost is going up. By the time you graduate, there's not as many jobs because they're automating things. I mean, I love technology. I do. But there is a double-edged sword to it, to where as the technology gets better, that they need fewer people. So, what do you do now with these people that got these degrees? Even if they got a degree and got a job, it might take even longer for them to move up out of, the entry-level position of the job. And, in IT, they're talking about AI just destroying the entire entry-level job, which is how I got in. Basically, I was the IT guy for the IT company, but that opened doors. So then I got to do entry-level consulting, and then I moved my way up, and now I'm a senior. But you have to be able to have those open positions at the bottom so people can get that experience. I just want to do what we can, at least at a local level, to help support families so that people can have opportunities. And so, yeah.
So let's talk about that role. Let's talk about that county commissioner role. I know some people may not really know what the commissioner does. I think it's a really important position. There's a lot that goes into it. It's very kind of intricate. So if you could tell us a little bit about what that role is and what kind of leadership you think that you can bring to that for Kenton County right now.
Sure. Yeah. So the county commissioner is part of the fiscal court, which is your local county government. Basically your judge executive, so it's Judge Knockelman, is essentially the president. And then you have the county commissioners are your congresspeople. So we have to represent the people of Kenton County. And in doing that, you are, you're setting and approving budgets. You're setting zoning and doing zoning laws. You're doing ordinances or the basic laws that govern your county. And so what I want to do, the important thing for me there is to help ensure that zoning is protecting people and their homes and their families, that we're not, selling out people just for easy money, whether it be manufacturing or a data center. I want to make sure that we are protecting people using our laws. So, some people want to put flock cameras out there or different little surveillance cameras out there so that they can track and monitor people. And I know that technically there's no legal right to privacy in the public, but I still think that we should severely limit, if not ban that from being something that we implement here, because of how technology can be abused. That's the double-edged sword of technology, is that you have all this data and it can be used and misused by people. And the county commissioners, their job is to protect and grow this county. And if you are only focused on growing businesses, but not the people, not making sure that they have opportunities, not making sure that they're represented, then yeah, you might bring in more tax revenue, but are you actually doing what's best for the people that live here? And so that's what I want to do, is be a voice and the eyes and ears for the people, because part of my job as a consultant IT engineer is to just listen to people. It's just listen. All you have to do is ask someone a question and they'll tell you how they feel. And right now, our county government likes to prescribe a lot of things. And they do this in these public-private partnerships, which is part of the job, because you are trying to raise money, you're trying to raise revenue, but you have to take into account the people that live here and what they want and what they need. Right now we have the B Northern Kentucky and the county are kind of pushing this SRI out there in southern Kenton County, and they've done this every couple years since 2014, which is essentially the entire term of everyone that's been on the court right now. And year after year, these people say, we don't want it. And they say, oh, we're not really planning it. But then they bring it up again, and they bring it up again. And it's like, well, you want it. Clearly you're planning to do this at some point. And so, either they need to listen to and work with the people if they want to actually do that and implement it. Instead of planning around them, they should plan with them, or they should listen to the people and say, okay, what do you want? What do you need in this area? And so I think that that's really what, that's the tactic I would take, is go to the people and say, what would be the best way to support you? How can we make what you need happen?
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't you give a little more detail on SRI? Some of our listeners may not know exactly what that is. The Site Readiness Initiative, is that right? We did talk about that in one of our earlier podcasts. Yeah, can you give us a little more detail on that, and what you see as the pros and cons of it, if there are any pros, and what your role in kind of monitoring that, making sure it is the best for the people, what you would do.
Yeah, so the Site Readiness Initiative, it essentially is a study that the county commissioned B Northern Kentucky, a nonprofit corporation, to essentially find where can we do more manufacturing in the county. Essentially, the way that the county government looks at it, the current fiscal court, we need more money and more revenue coming into the county. That's how they look at it, which, to a degree is true. And so they commissioned B Northern Kentucky and said, hey, we've got a bunch of warehouses. We don't want warehouses anymore. We want manufacturing, because those create good jobs. And they do create good jobs. I'm not bashing manufacturing. That's definitely a very important job. My wife's grandpa, he worked on the Chevy plant out there. And so manufacturing is very good jobs. Like, I'm not trying to bash that and say we don't want that. But the SRI, basically, they've identified where they want to put the manufacturing plants. Instead of asking around and saying, hey, who wants to sell their land, who wants to carve off a piece, the B Northern Kentucky, in their study, they identified the ideal locations for manufacturing. So essentially what they've been doing for years is saying, we like these spots over here in South Kenton, and we want to put manufacturing plants here. So even though the people say, we don't want to sell our land, we don't want to do that there, they keep pushing that. And it's funny, because if you go to the county commissioners or the county website, there is a web page that has a bunch of links from all the different documents that they've generated over the years about the SRI. And in one of those documents, it says, oh, this is not a plan. Well, one of those documents also is the SRI itself, where it says, this is the plan. This is the plan for manufacturing. And so it's kind of talking out of both sides of its mouth, because they're saying, oh, it's not really a plan, but that's the whole point. The whole point is you're planning to have manufacturing. And, I'm not against manufacturing, whole writ. Like, if we can find a good place where, someone wants to sell their land, it's going to work out well, it helps develop the area. I mean, they're going to have to put in, all of the various services, plumbing, electric, everything like that. So, I mean, it will create jobs. It'll create jobs for the construction crews. It will create jobs for the manufacturing. But one, we need to make sure that people actually want it. And then two, we need to make sure that it's going to be the type of manufacturing that isn't going to destroy our environment. There's a lot of manufacturing that is good, that you can do in a warehouse, and that's not going to destroy the environment. There's other manufacturing that is going to have a lot of runoff, that's going to drain your electrical grid, that's going to drain your water resources. And so I think just being responsible about it is really the important key, but really also primarily listening to the people. So when you keep saying, hey, we found the perfect piece of land down here in southwest Kenton County, and they say, we don't care, we're not selling our land, then you take that advice and say, okay, I guess we'll find somewhere else.
Yeah, there's that famous case in Mayville where the mother and daughter is refused $26 million, I think it was, to sell to a data center. They were given that option, and they said, no, we don't want to sell our land. So good for them for saying that's not what they want their land to go to. But you have that. The point is you want that choice, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's very commendable of that family. That's one thing too, is like these people in South Kenton, a lot of them are farmers. They have farmland. And that's the part of the problem, is that they have farms. You don't want to put manufacturing plants next to a farm. Even if it is a clean plant, you don't want this giant manufacturing plant next to your farm. That's, that kind of takes away from the character of the environment, let alone, any destruction to the natural environment. But on the flip side, I would say support the farms, support the farmers. We're looking at some kind of wild chaos out there in the economy and potentially our food supplies. We might need those farms. You might want those farmers producing more wheat, more beef. That might be a little bit more important than a manufacturing plant.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting when you think about all of that, and it's critical to our infrastructure. But if you were elected to this commissioner, I mean, we talked about a couple priorities you're thinking about, but if there were maybe a couple top two, top three real issues that you want to focus on improving in that position.
So obviously, I love IT. I use the data centers. I depend on the data centers, but I don't want a data center in our county. So number one would be ensuring, and I know Sarah said the same thing in hers, we aren't even sure if that's really something that is up for debate. We don't know. But that's also part of the issue with the SRIs. We don't really know what they're planning to bring out here. We just know that they want to develop it. Well, if it comes to a data center, I'm a hard no on that. We don't really know all the full effects, but we're starting to see them in certain areas. You have higher electric bills, higher water bills. They just came out with a study talking about that it creates a heat island. It literally increases the temperature of the ground and air around the environment for miles. And not to be glib, but for years, I've called this area the Ohio River Valley. I call it the Ohio Cancer Valley. My grandma had cancer. My buddy just died of cancer a year ago. I don't want any other things in this area that could potentially harm the health of people. So I don't look at it. It's not, I'm against AI. I love AI. My job is deploying AI right now. I look at it from a public health issue. And to add to that, I do think that we need to support some of the ideas that people have had of, we need to have more family centers. We need to have more health centers out there for people. At a time when they're cutting a lot of costs from the federal government, we need to make sure that from a local side, that we are protecting our healthcare system and our hospitals and creating more choice and more options for people, because that also drives down prices. More options helps bring down the price. That's the issue with the housing market right now. On the housing side, I think that we need to explore different housing options. We need to figure out, how do we create more homes for people when the homes that we have are already too expensive and there's not enough. But that's part of what the county has looked into as well, is that we do have a housing shortage. How do we make those more affordable? I know they have a housing fund that's going to go to the developers so that helps spur them to build. But why don't we have a housing fund for first-time home buyers? Why don't we have things like that? So that's more of a theoretical thing. That's more of something we'd have to explore more. But the data centers is a big one. I do want to restrict, if not ban, the flock security cameras, just because I'm sorry, I find that creepy and weird. I don't want my kid being tracked. That is not the way. That's just not Kentucky. That's just not how Kentucky is. It's so strange. I don't know why. I get that, you want security, but we all take our shoes off at the TSA, and that's not saving lives either.
Right.
But on the flip side, something a little bit more positive, more supportive is I want to really support growth in the trades and technical. That's one thing is, so like, I do have a degree in political science. What I've really learned is that it helps me learn. That degree, it's not really applicable to a lot of your life unless you're obsessed with politics. But it's all about research. It's all about learning new things. And so that has helped me in IT. But part of that too is that I wish I would have gotten a trade when I was in college. I wish I would have gotten an actual skill that when I was on hard times, I could have gone out and, if I had been an electrician or a plumber, I would have had a real skill that is always in need, that someone is always going to want. And so that's something I kind of look at it as a duality. You need the old school skills, the trades that are always going to be necessary, but you also need some new technical skills. You need to have technical knowledge for the new economy that's coming. But I also think it actually goes beyond just jobs. To me, technological education, it should be for children. It should be for the elderly, because we need people to understand how to be safe on the internet, how to see when someone's scamming you, how to identify a deep fake or AI manipulation. I mean, that's going to be a huge issue coming up. And so it really goes beyond just jobs. It's really about safety and really understanding the world around you. And one thing I wish I would have gotten my grandparents more of this. I wish I would have actually tried, because with cell phones and computers, elderly people that can't leave, that can't get out of the house, that's a lifeline. That's a way for them to connect with anyone and everyone, anywhere. And so, but we also want to make sure that they understand how to use it properly and how to, stay safe, how to not get conned or scammed by people, because there's a lot of people scamming people now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was interested in your a discussion on the trades. I had looked at your website, and that was one of the things that was mentioned. That's always been kind of near and dear to my heart, because I worked construction for many years, and then I ended up in IT as well, almost by accident. Sounds kind of familiar. And I just think the trades are so critical, and there's good money to be made. And as you said, I mean, that is one thing. I don't think we're going to be able to train AI to install your HVAC system. I mean, somebody needs to bang that ductwork together, and it's a very, those are noble professions that are valuable, and somebody can make a very good living doing that. So I'm all for pushing that as well. County government, like all government, and really most things in business as well, you need to be able to collaborate. You need to be able to work with others, and you need to work with people sometimes who don't share the same opinions or the same ideas or the same goals as you. So how do you approach working with people? And having an IT background, I never ran into anybody and any of my customers who didn't agree exactly with what I was professing. How do you work with people who may not always agree with you? How do you see yourself in that position, and how do you manage those types of relationships?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of background. When I was younger, I really always felt like I had a need to be right. I really thought I always had to be right about everything. And I would argue, and I always had to be right. One thing I love about IT is it taught me to be wrong. It taught me to embrace failure and to know that I wasn't always going to have all the answers or the right answer, and that things are more collaborative. When you're in college or when you're growing up, you're writing a paper and you're like, oh, well, I'm right, so I'm going to say exactly what I think and what I think is best. But when you get in the real world, what you realize is that actually you don't have all the information. And even if you have a lot of information, there's someone else who might have a different perspective on it. Yeah. And that's something I actually just talked about in a meeting earlier today. We were talking about, documentation and some of the requirements that we needed. And do we know what we need? And one of my fellow coworkers was like, why don't we just ask them? And that's how I look at things. It used to be that I thought I had ideas, and I do want to have ideas, but at the end of the day, I just want to ask people. I want to hear what someone else has to say and what they think is best, because I can have my idea for what I think can help Kenton County. At Kenton County, is 170, 180,000 people. I'm pretty sure everyone has different ideas. And I want to hear those ideas. I don't live in South Kenton. My grandparents, they lived out in kind of the sticks of Campbell County there, but I don't know what's best for them. But I can listen to them and they can tell me. And so if I disagree with somebody, if I'm coming at it and saying, well, I think we should do this, and someone else says, well, I don't think we should do that. Okay, well, what do you think? What could we do? Can we meet in the middle? Is this, just a hard no? How do you find that? And so to me, it's just listening to people.
And there may be more than one right answer, right?
That too. There's not always just one right answer.
And that kind of leads into my next question. When you have two good options, you are going to be facing a primary challenger.
Nice segue.
Yes.
See how that just worked right in there. But no, you are gonna be facing a primary challenger for this seat. So can you tell us a little bit about what sets you apart, or maybe why you think your vision is a little bit better for Kenton County, or your approach?
Yeah, so I will say I'm a little bit younger than John, just a little bit, but our backgrounds, and I will say we actually do have somewhat similar backgrounds because he isn't a business owner, but he still has clients that he has to answer to. But there is a difference between being a business owner and being a consultant, being a collaborator, and that I can take ownership over what I do, but I don't own the tools. I don't own the business. I'm not the decision maker at the end of the day, but I am there to guide people towards the right decisions and then help implement those solutions. And that is a skill that I had to develop over years and years of failure, over years of struggling to start, struggling to find my place in the world. There used to be a lot of talk about, what do they call it? But basically, in IT, I forget the term, but people feeling like they don't belong or feeling like they're pretending.
Imposter syndrome.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome. For years, I dealt with imposter syndrome, and I'm like, I don't belong here. And then I would talk to other people, that are above me, my managers, or even, some of the people that are kind of above them. And they had the same degrees. They went to the same schools. They had some of the same teachers. They went through the same thing. And so I come at it with the perspective of I've lived through the 2008 crisis. I lived through 2020 and COVID. I've lived through these things as a young man, as a young person. And I know what it's like to struggle. I still struggle some days, unfortunately. And so I know what a lot of younger people are going through, and older people, because that's the thing too. Older people are being faced with these struggles as well. People who thought, oh, I got this good job, I have this career, I'm saving up for my 401k. And then, unfortunately, a lot of companies, they get incentivized to do layoffs. And we know what's next. What do I do next? I actually have a buddy. He has the same birthday as me. I think he's about 20 years older than me. We just got lunch on our birthdays, March 9th. But he was faced with that situation of what do I do now? And so, I tried to stay humble and stay connected and remind myself of where I came from. I remember making $12 an hour and how hard it was. That when my wife and I first got married, we lived, it was the house across the street. We lived with my best friend, and they were both kind of the breadwinners. And I was barely able to do anything. I was busy cooking and cleaning to make up for the fact that I didn't have that much money to pay for the rent. And so I think I can bring a perspective of knowing what it's like to struggle and knowing, not to say that John doesn't know, because I don't know his full story, but I'm a little bit closer to that time in my life and where people are now, possibly than someone who owns a very successful business. And that's the thing, I'm not poo-pooing that. If I could own a great business to where I didn't have to work for somebody else and didn't have to worry about money, that would be fantastic. That is the American dream. But, unfortunately, not everybody gets to live that life, and I can bring that perspective.
Sounds great.
Very good. Well, we are wrapping up, getting close to wrapping up. And, before we let you go, I know you listen to the podcast. We do a lightning round with all of our guests, if you'd be up for that.
Yes, I am ready for the lightning round.
Are you ready? All right. Well, this one I think is maybe a softball. I don't know. We'll give it to you.
Start them out easy, Natalie. Start them out easy.
Or maybe it's hard. Let's see. Let's ask you, what is the best thing about being a new father?
See, it is a softball, but it's also hard because
That's what I thought. Maybe this is hard because it's probably so much, right?
it is just it's hard to describe. It is just because it's so life-changing. It has changed my life entirely. I used to stay up all night, I work, hang out with my wife, and then I would stay up all night playing video games. I can't tell you the last time I played a video game. But just holding my son, seeing him smile, hearing him laugh. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. It's something I want everyone to experience. Fatherhood is the best part of fatherhood.
I love it. I was afraid that I would tear up. I'm a big sap, It's like, I don't know how he answers this. It might make me tear up.
I didn't want to get too sappy. I didn't want to.
You almost got me. You almost got me. And just give it a few years and he'll be playing video games with you. So,
I know. That'd be fun.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All right, this one's a little easier. Would you rather spend a week in the mountains or by the ocean?
When I was younger, it was mountains. But when we got married, we honeymooned in Jamaica, and that was Jamaica. It's not just the ocean, it's Jamaica. I want to go to Jamaica.
Yeah, that's it. Very specific.
Yeah.
Love it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Which movie could you watch on repeat over and over again? We all have one.
I mean, any Star Wars movie, but if I have to pick one movie, it's going to be Batman 89.
And who was Batman for that one?
Michael Keaton. That movie came out the year I was born, and it is still like the best. It's the best.
The Michael Keaton Batman.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. If you're gonna read a book, how do you do it? Paperback or audio?
I really prefer paperback, but with time and my shortened attention span of holding a book, it's audiobook. It's audiobook. I could listen to that, clean the house, carry Hayden, walk the dogs. It's audiobook.
You could get a lot done. You can be in the car, pop it on.
Yeah. You can travel. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite landmark in Kenton County?
Actual landmark is probably the Roebling, but my favorite part of Kenton County is honestly just my little neighborhood.
Yeah. Here
along, like, I don't know if I want to dox myself, but here, it's a little corner of a Dixie and Turkey Foot. It's close enough. But just walking this little neighborhood here. I just love seeing the little lakes. I have all my neighbors and neighborhood friends and their dogs, and I just love that. I just love our neighborhood.
See, that wasn't so bad.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, Jordan, thanks so much for joining us. It was really good getting to know you better, and I know our listeners are really going to appreciate that as well. And probably a lot of them are really going to be able to relate to your experience and your background as well, which I think is awesome for a candidate. It gives you a step up for sure. And then how can everyone learn more about your campaign and get involved?
First off, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and introduce myself more to you and your audience. And hopefully I get some other people more excited for the campaign.
Right.
But if they want to reach out to me, my website is Jordan4FOR Kenton.com. So you can find out more information there. My email is jordan.4FOR@KentonKY@gmail.com. So they can always email me there. Look me up on the socials. I'm Jordan Baldridge for Kenton County Commissioner. It's very long. But you can find me on all the socials. I've got a cell phone number out there that actually goes to my phone. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, they can reach out to me through text or even call me. I try to be an open book for anyone. So yeah, feel free to reach out in any way, shape, or form. I'm happy to talk to anybody.
And you got a kickoff event coming up, right? An official kickoff.
I do. Thank you for bringing that up. I have an official kickoff here on the 21st. It's going to be up the street at one of our precinct officers' homes. So hopefully I'll see some Kenton County residents as well as some fellow Lakeside Park residents here. And I look forward to meeting more of you.
And I'm sure you'll have all that on your socials, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's all on my socials. Now I'll keep blasting it out there too so it doesn't get lost.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's the way to do it.
That's right.
Thanks so much,
again, Jordan.
Thanks so much for being here. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
All right. Take care.
You too.
And that's it for this candidate interview. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming podcasts or exclusive material. And don't forget, you can join the conversation at our Facebook and Instagram pages or at bluedoutpodcast.com. Until next time, stay curious, keep the facts in focus, and never stop fighting for what matters. Peace out, everybody.